The Change Officer Podcast's Future of Financial Services series is brought to you by Holy Wallet, the world's first wallet-as-a-service platform. Stay tuned to find out how Holy Wallet can help you build your mobile wallet to increase revenue and reduce time to market.
And I think what is starting to happen is that more and more functions are going to continue getting democratized, and people will start operating their mini businesses that serve multiple businesses at large. So I think that's like one big thought that I have. And two, I guess it sounds very cliche, but I think to start a business, to run a business, and to operate a business is all just going to get dramatically easier.
Welcome to the Change Officer Podcast's Future of Financial Services series. In this series, we are deep diving into some of the hottest and most pivotal topics in the financial services industry right now, including personalization in financial services, embedded finance, and the mobile payment revolution. Join us as we seek the answers to critical questions such as what does the future hold for the financial services sector and where should we look for the next big disruptive idea. Welcome back to the Change Officer, Mo.
Thank you very much. Excited to be back and on here as always.
Yeah. So unlike the initial session, we don't have 45 minutes to talk. We have only 15. We're going to keep it focused. It's the Future of Financial Services series. You've been in this space for a while now. Started a couple of businesses, Dapi, Pluto now that you're running. Super exciting stuff. So I want to hear your opinion, your thoughts and ideas on a couple of topics. I want to start from the SME segment. Now, since the whole explosion of fintechs that happened, starting from the West and US back in, 2000s even, and then moving slowly towards the rest of the world and East, and then coming to the Middle East as well. There has been a lot of things going on, most of it in the consumer sector, right? SME wasn't that sexy to tap into because of multiple different, obstacles and issues that come with solving problems for the SME segment. But you've been tapping into that segment now for the second time. What have you noticed so far? What have you learned so far? And what do you see? What are the trends that you're noticing in that sector? And what do you anticipate to happen in the next couple of years?
So I think you're absolutely right. It makes total sense. The world has just focused heavily on consumer and not really on business. And, this has been evident across all these different technology companies. Uber has just heavily focused on ride sharing for consumers initially. The Instacarts of the world have been focusing heavily on grocery shopping for individuals, right? And only now have we seen like this sudden surge in B2B marketplaces and business planning tools and et cetera, right? So I think a few different things. One is that from like a natural kind of evolution standpoint, I think it's been interesting that consumers have first gotten a taste of a lot of these products and services, which I think has been good in a way because it reduces skepticism. And what I mean by that is that businesses in general, by nature, I feel like are slightly more reluctant to change versus an individual. And put it this way, right? The guy who's already used or has already done online shopping as a consumer and now happens to be a decision maker in a business that's on the verge of using this B2B marketplace, the possibility of acceptance is just a lot higher. So I think it almost feels like a natural evolution as to why business has come after consumer.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And what do you think are the key influencers that are driving this now slow change that is happening for the SME sector as well?
Yeah, so I think the influencing factors. One, I think COVID has been a huge part. Like I think it's propelled us years ahead, right? Because essentially,
they say. By the way, I just read a quick report. They say 56% of SMEs decided to pivot or to change their business model and to switch it more towards digital channels.
Yeah, and like that just makes a ton of sense, right? Because I think there are two aspects to this. One is the fact that businesses can dramatically increase efficiency, right? They can reduce the number of people that work there. They can increase speed, et cetera. And all in all, it's doing one of two things. It's either helping them make more money or it's helping them save money. In fact, I mean, I'm jumping the gun over here, but even at Pluto, those are the two key things that we're really focused on: helping businesses save time and money. And I guess what's happened in recent times that has resulted towards the propulsion of a lot of these different B2B models is the fact that when businesses were trapped in COVID, they realized that, okay, holy shit, we can't meet in person, we can't go there, we can't go here. How are we going to get things done? And I think this is where it's almost forced them to kind of go down the path of like using digital products and services. And I think that has then resulted in them realizing as well that, okay, this can actually save us so much time, money, and like help us be efficient.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. So coming to the Pluto's model and what you're working on, what was the opportunity that you noticed in this segment that you decided to tap into and that made you excited and, to start a business?
Yeah, I think like it all starts back for myself. So, like prior to being in the tech and venture space, I've always been in more so the SMB space, run a company doing film production, doing aerial cinematography and photography. And then I come from like a family background of entrepreneurs, including my father who's been running different businesses. And all throughout personal experience, as well as just looking at family businesses around, it's just been very evident to me that B2B payments is just so broken dramatically, right? Across the entire spectrum. I mean, that's just one piece, and then I'll come back to some other, some other aspects of just some other pain points in the business world that I've noticed. But very specifically, payments. And when I say payments, there are a bunch of different things, but more so specifically, the ability to make a payment and to get paid.
Sure.
Talking about making a payment. Making a payment starts from operational expenses, for instance. I remember, when I was running this film production company, and when I had one of the camera guys have one of their lenses get damaged, or an urgent requirement for like a memory card or like whatever it was, right? And it would get so frustrating because I had to account for all those different situations, and when they had to make some sort of an urgent purchase, oftentimes they just wouldn't have enough money in their pockets, or they wouldn't have a card that they can swipe. And then I was forced to like distribute either my personal card to them because my bank only gave me a single card with no spend control, so there was a risk of fraud out there. Now, I can't be giving this individual, of course, my primary bank card. And so all in all, notice very similar trends across different businesses as well. The fact that operational spending, one, is just incredibly broken. Businesses lose so much money in lose petty cash to employees. It becomes very frustrating for business owners and managers to be distributing personal cards to employees, and then that results in an accounting nightmare and just overall inefficiency. And then even beyond that, right? Like just kicking back and thinking, most businesses think that it's totally normal for them to have to spend so much time entering a vendor or a supplier's bank details in the banking portal, massive forms. After doing that, having to chase back and forth, the supplier then gets back to you and says, "Hey, by the way, did you make that payment? Okay, how do I know? Can you please take a screenshot of that Swift copy?" And if you've heard this term before, but especially in the SMB world,
like I hate Swift copies.
Yeah,
to be honest,
they're so frustrating, right?
Absolutely, nightmare. Can you share with me your Swift copy so I can chase the payment on my end? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. My end, exactly, right? In fact, that's literally the sort of emails we see from accountants. Please share the Swift copy so I can chase the payment, right? And can you imagine how bizarre that is? Because lots of businesses use that as a benchmark of, okay, if I see the Swift copy, I'm going to deliver your products and services. It happens oftentimes. How easy is it from a fraud perspective to not even Photoshop this, but open a simple word processing software and chicka boom, and you send the Swift copy across, right? But, point being, we spoke about making payments, which is an absolute nightmare. Jumping ship a little bit, receiving payments is even more frustrating, right? And I'll tell you what frustrates me the most. The number of instances where I have received a goddamn screenshot of someone's IBAN number and their account number over WhatsApp, right?
Oh, where you need to type in that 16-digit number.
You type in, and you get it wrong the first and the second time, and then you want to pull your hair off your head, and you finally get it right the third time, right? Only to realize that the Swift code is missing. So now you switch off your browser, go back to this guy, and ask him to send you Swift code, right? So, I just believe that there has to be a better way. I mean, obviously, in this part of the world, even when it comes to peer-to-peer payments in the consumer space, we've only seen innovation recently. In fact, most folks, most people still probably do manual bank transfers and things. But the likes of MamoPay, the likes of Xena, the likes of Kareem Pay now, I think, Kareem Pay is an exciting one given the fact that they've got so much distribution. In fact, I used Kareem Pay for the first time yesterday. But I guess, given the fact that innovation on the consumer side, at least in this part of the world, has only happened recently, I think the future of business payments needs to be literally vendor name, click, email, button, send,
Yeah.
And
No, absolutely. I think that the opportunities, there are plenty of opportunities. I'm going to ask you for the end to pick one where if you were to start a third business that you would focus on, but we're going to leave that for the end. Now, what I want to hear from you, I mean, the demand for these services is massive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, SMEs, although it's a very wide spectrum of what the SMEs are, but in general, SMEs have been reluctant to these kind of services, products, etc. What have you learned about SMEs and customers so far? What is the best way, or what are the obstacles that you need to overcome in order to to get them on board and to start working with them?
Totally right. So I think when we see the non-tech SMB or SME, we see them even though a lot of these aren't necessarily technology companies, we still categorize them at Pluto as a tech-first company or a traditional business. And what I mean by that, when I think of an ad agency, when I think of an e-commerce business, when I think of a film production company, consultancy firm, et cetera, these aren't necessarily technology companies, but they're modern, they're tech-forward. They've already got exposure over a ton of SaaS products and software that they're already using, making that customer a lot more accepting to new technology. And that is the type of customer we focus on first. And when it comes to the more so traditional business, we plan on really tackling that sector slightly after, as we start growing and we start focusing kind of more on the mid-market and upper mid-market segments, those businesses that have a bit more red tape start coming into play. But what we've realized, though, is that a lot of those businesses, in fact, tons of them whom we chatted with, also face very similar problems.
What are those?
Primarily cash leakages, because a lot of these traditional businesses happen to have tons of operational employees, oftentimes blue-collar workers, et cetera, and all of them incur expenses on a daily basis, be it buying a meal on the go, buying screws on the go, buying drill bits on the go. And there's just so much fraud that's happening. A bunch of different businesses whom we've chatted with. What's really kind of what's really stood out is the number of instances that we've seen of fraud happen. I distributed 2 million dirhams in petty cash and 300,000 is missing this year, right? Just things on those lines, and it becomes really hard to pick, point, and track, right? Because there's just so much, and a lot of these employees are very clever, right? As soon as they start making purchases on a daily cadence, it doesn't hurt them too much to go like, oh, by the way, I'm going to come and buy this pack of screws for 20 dirhams, but can you please bill me 50 dirhams, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just starts getting very challenging to track and catch. But
I think that definitely the business case is there. What is the biggest challenge for you at this stage of penetrating the market and getting customers on board?
So I think for us, the biggest challenge is the fact that we're building in an ecosystem with broken infrastructure. And I'm saying this from the perspective of someone who previously built out DAPI, that was the first open banking infrastructure play in the UAE, right? And the fact that in North America and the US specifically, you can plug and play with a bunch of infrastructure platforms, APIs, and go live so quickly, and that doesn't exist here, right? It's happening. We've got banking as service companies like Nimcard, that's an issuer processor, a couple of other processors working with banks, open banking plays like DAPI and Lean and Tharab with Gateway. But the point is that most of these companies are still very nascent, and I don't blame them either, because they're also dealing with a lot of red tape around regulation, legacy systems with banks. Only a handful of banks. I think it's important to note that we're in a part of the world where about 7 to 12 banks dominate this entire country, right? The United States has hundreds of banks, right? And I think like all of those factors also kind of come into play in terms of how competitive financial institutions are, when working with fintechs. But I think it's really all the red tape around enablement. Enablement is the biggest piece.
Hey everyone, sorry for jumping in. We'll be back with the rest of the conversation shortly, but I wanted to take a moment to thank the sponsor of our show, Holly Wally. Within the next 2 years, 4 billion people will be using digital wallets, and the global mobile payments market size is expected to hit US $5.5 billion by 2024. It's more important than ever for financial service providers to offer a digital wallet service to their customers. Enter Holly Wally, the world's first wallet-as-a-service platform that allows any financial service provider to build their own digital wallet as efficiently and cost-effectively as possible. Whether you're a fintech, retailer, banking institution, or insurance carrier, Holly Wally has all the elements you need to build your own company's ideal digital wallet in a matter of minutes and manage it on an ongoing basis. To find out how Holly Wally can increase your customer engagement and revenue, or to register for a demo, visit hollywally.com. The link can be found in the show notes of this episode. And now enjoy the rest of this conversation. Before we wrap up, I have this last question, and this is the question that everyone gets. So let's see how you're going to answer it. So the change officer, we are trying to predict the change, right? The change is the only constant.
Change is the only constant. That's your mantra.
There you go. So if that's true, like what we want to know, what's the change ahead? So what is the change that you anticipate to happen in the emerging markets overall that will open up some major new opportunities that you would personally put an eye on in the future to work on and to leverage? What do you think is ahead of us? Where do you expect the next big thing to arise?
I think let's just talk about businesses, right? I think one big thesis that I've got is the notion around the shrinking business, right? And I think as time is progressing, and as businesses start leveraging new technology, which eventually results them in needing a smaller workforce over time as more and more functions get automated, I think businesses are going to continue shrinking and becoming smaller. But that being said, I think a new breed of entrepreneurs are going to start emerging in all these different markets, who will serve similar functions but work for themselves. And here's what I mean, right? For example, today at Pluto, it's been ridiculously easy for us to work in contract with a phenomenal product designer out of Georgia, for instance. I've never met the guy in person, but he works for us. This guy probably had a full-time job somewhere before, has left, and works for himself. And I think what is starting to happen is that more and more functions are going to continue getting democratized, and people will start operating their mini businesses that serve multiple businesses at large. So I think that's like one big thought that I have. And two, I guess it sounds very cliche, but I think to start a business, to run a business, and to operate a business is all just going to get dramatically easier.
Well, thanks again for coming on The Change Officer. It was a pleasure having you.
Likewise. Thank you very much. This was awesome.
Guys, thanks for staying. I hope you enjoyed this session with powerful Mo. Let's keep an eye on what he is working on. I'm expecting a lot. And stay tuned. There's another great session coming up soon. Thanks.